Coming in at number 31 on the draft rankings is Henry Mews from the Ottawa 67s. A good Ottawa lad. We love that. 6 foot tall, 180-pound right shot defenseman, a March birthday, and a guy whose consistency is the calling card of his game.
Ross, I think you just hit about 4 separate check boxes for Sens fans for what they're looking for in a draft player. A right-hand shot defenseman, yup. Ottawa boy, yup. Over or at least 6 feet, yup. Puts up points, yup. Like, this guy is a very interesting prospect for the Ottawa Senators, especially when, like you mentioned, born in Ottawa, played junior in Ottawa. Why not keep that train going and play pro in Ottawa? In 65 games with the 67s this season, he had 15 goals, 46 assists, good for 61 points. Now, the points did drop off a bit in the playoffs, but that'll happen sometimes. In 10 playoff games, still 5 points. So that's, for a defenseman, that's still solid. He was a point per game guy in the U18s with Team Canada with 7 points in
including
7 games.
3 assists in the final against the States.
Yeah, so look, maybe it dropped off in the playoffs with the 67s, but he was able to ramp it up in a clutch, meaningful game with Team Canada. So you love to see that. And this is a guy that the rankings aren't that it's not that crazy, the range of them. Like, there's a couple people that are lower, a couple people that are higher, but for the most part, it's a general consensus about what this player is.
Scott Wheeler has him at 25 on his rankings. Chris Peters at 31. Bob McKenzie at 37. Should mention McKean's at 27. Corey Prodman has him at 42. And Elite Prospects down at 45. That's an average of 34.5. He was the 7th overall pick in the OHL draft a couple of years ago. He's been a huge part of the 67 success, but according to Wheeler, scouts have some very wide opinions of him, probably further than the range that we have right now for our 7 entities, because in his rookie year with the OHL, he was unbelievable and just kind of really an important player on what was a great 67s team. He plays well internationally, but this year, you mentioned the points fell off in the playoffs. There's also some parts of the season where he maybe wasn't at his best. Looked sloppy, unsure of himself at times even, according to Scott Wheeler, and that has had scouts turn their back on a player who was once thought of to be a lottery pick, and now it's almost like, okay, will he be a first rounder, is now the conversation around Mews.
Yeah, Mews is an offenseman. Don't get it twisted. This guy knows how to play with the puck. He knows how to put the puck in the back of the net. He knows how to set up Luca Pinelli. Ross, I don't know if you experienced the same thing, but watching 67 highlights, I'm blanking on the 67's play-by-play announcer, but he could have just done a recording of, and Henry Mews passes it up to Luca Pinelli, and Pinelli scores. And then he could have just went and got a coffee and played that on loop, because that was all of the highlights of Henry Mews, it seemed like, were assists to Luca Pinelli. And he had a lot of assists this year, 46 of them. And he led in power play assists with 19. He was 3rd on the 67 in points. He's patient with the puck. He draws opponents in, and then once opponents are drawn into him, he finds those guys with the open ice, usually Pinelli, and then they're able to make a big play there. Now, those are some of the positives of him. You did mention some of the negatives, and you can kind of tell that he's a guy that cheats on offense a little bit. He gets out of position a little bit defensively, and sometimes he's a little too excited to make that pinch at the blue line, and he gets burned on it. But it's one of those things where, I'm not comparing him to Erik Karlsson, but the similar qualms about Karlsson, where it's like, man, he's making that pinch. He's leaving Mark Method out to dry, and he's always focused on offense. But Erik Karlsson would get you 2-3 points a night, and maybe it would cost you 1 or 2 goals, but you know he's going to come up with those points. And I feel like that's kind of where Mews is at right now. Now, you don't necessarily want that. You want a defenseman that can play defense. I know, crazy theory, but I think when you're so successful offensively, you got to cut him a bit of slack when it comes to the defense, or you got to find him, just like Erik Karlsson with Mark Mathot. You have to find him the right complementary D partner, Ross. We always talk about the yin and yang. Get Henry Mews with the left-hand shot shutdown defenseman.
But how long until you could see Henry Mews in the league? Because to me, there's some refinement in the consistency within the game for him about making his reads and having everything kind of flow a little bit better when you're thinking about what it projects to be in the pro game.
No, that's definitely fair. I don't think this is a guy that's going to get drafted and come into the NHL right away for sure. Definitely, I do not think that. I wouldn't be surprised, Ross, if he plays another year in junior. He's got 2 years under his belt here with the 67, so get him another year in Ottawa in junior, and then maybe he goes to the AHL for a season or two, and then he's in the NHL. So I guess to answer your question, at least 3 more years of development before you see him even start to get in NHL games, because I think there is a lot of work that development coaches and other coaches are going to have to do along the way to get his defensive game up to where it needs to be to play at the professional level.
The good news, though, is when you want to teach someone defense, the number one thing they have to have is skating, right? You have to be able to get to the positions defensively to even think about making a play, and skating is the number one attribute for Henry Mews. McKean's just lauding the fact that he's never out of a play when he's back checking, and he's able to jump up into the rush and help out with that great speed and great skating ability. So I like Henry Mews as a player. I don't think I like him at 25. I think I like him more in the 39 range. Will he get that deep? Probably not, even though at Bob, he's 37 on Bob's list. So maybe he does fall to 39. What do you have for Sens stars on Henry Mews?
I've got 4 out of 5 stars here, Ross. Like I mentioned off the top of this profile, he checks a lot of the boxes for what Sens fans are looking for and would get excited about. However, I have to do this every time because it's a big part of it. If the Sens were to select Zane Parekh with 7th overall, you do not draft Henry Mews later, in my opinion. Now, if the Sens do not draft Zane Parekh or a right shot defenseman with 7th overall, then you start taking a look at a guy like Henry Mews. I don't think he's going to be there at 39, Ross. So I think either if he's still on the table and they haven't selected a right-hand shot defenseman, they got to decide whether to nab him with 25 or let him free and say, hey, enjoy your time in Ottawa in juniors, but you're not going to be back here for the pros, or at least not right away. So I like Henry Mews, 4 to 5 stars.
A good old Nepean Raider alumni, Henry Mews, comes in at number 31 on our NHL draft rankings.